My marriage did not begin to fall apart slowly or quietly. It began in a medical room with the lights too bright, the air too cold, and a doctor who could not stop staring at my paperwork instead of the screen that was supposed to show my baby's heartbeat. At that moment, I did not know that my husband had already planned my destruction, or that my pregnancy was the final piece of a long and careful trap. I only knew that something was wrong, and that whatever it was had nothing to do with my body, and everything to do with the man I had trusted with my life. My name is Daphne Wilson. I am 32 years old, married for 3 years and 4 months pregnant. I live a quiet life, or at least I thought I did. I work in marketing, I avoid attention, and I come from a family that values privacy over display. My husband, Grant Mercer, works as a financial advisor. He is charming, calm, and admired by everyone who meets him. People often tell me how lucky I am. Until that morning, I believed them. The appointment was supposed to be routine, a standard ultrasound. My regular doctor was away, so I was scheduled with someone else. Grant did not come with me. He said he had an important client meeting and kissed my forehead before leaving, promising to call later. I did not question it. I rarely did. I lay back on the table, the gel cold on my skin, waiting for the familiar sound and movement that always made me smile. The doctor greeted me politely and made small talk while adjusting the machine. Everything felt normal until she opened my file. Her expression changed instantly. She read the first page again, slower this time. Her hands began to shake. She did not look at the screen. She looked at my husband's name printed at the top of the page. Without saying a word, she turned off the monitor. The room went quiet. She took a breath, then told me she needed to speak with me privately. She led me to her office, closed the door, and locked it. I was already panicking, convinced something was wrong with the baby. Then she said, "You need to leave your husband today." And in that moment, everything I thought I knew about my life began to break. I laughed when she said it, not because it was funny, but because my mind refused to accept the sentence as real. Leave my husband today. It sounded like a mistake, like she had confused me with someone else. I asked her what she was talking about. I told her we were expecting a child. I told her we were fine. I told her she was scaring me. She did not answer right away. She watched me carefully, as if deciding how much truth my body could handle without collapsing. Then she said she could not explain everything yet, only that I was not in danger from a medical condition, but from a person, from my husband. She told me I needed to listen very carefully and not react until she finished speaking. That was when I stopped laughing. Before she continued, she asked me questions that felt unrelated. How long had I been married? Where my husband worked? Whether we had done fertility treatment. When I answered the last one, I saw confirmation cross her face. She reached into a locked drawer and pulled out a folder thick with documents. She placed it on the desk but did not open it. She told me she had recognized my husband's name the moment she saw my file. Not because of me, but because of where she had heard it before. She said someone close to her worked at the fertility clinic my husband had chosen. She said that 3 weeks earlier, that person had come to her crying and confessed to something that could not be undone. My head felt light. I asked her to stop speaking in pieces and tell me clearly what she meant. She told me she would, but only if I promised not to go home and confront him. She said if I did, I would destroy my only advantage. She finally opened the folder. I did not read anything yet. I could not. I was still stuck on one sentence she had said quietly but firmly. "Your pregnancy is real," she told me, "but your husband did not tell you the truth about how it happened." I asked her what she meant. She said, "Your husband planned this long before you ever saw 2 pink lines." And then she told me we needed to go back to the beginning because nothing about my marriage had been accidental. To understand what my husband had done, she said I needed to understand how he entered my life. Not the version I believed, but the version that actually happened. I met Grant 4 years ago at a charity event hosted by my family. I did not know him before that night. At least, I thought I didn't. He approached me casually, made conversation that had nothing to do with money, and acted like he had no idea who my family was. At the time, that felt refreshing. Looking back, it feels calculated. He told me he was a financial advisor who had come as a guest of a colleague. He asked about my work, my interests, my plans. He listened carefully. He remembered everything. He never asked about my inheritance, even though it was public knowledge among people who mattered. That silence made me trust him more than any direct reassurance could have. We dated for a year. He was consistent. He called when he said he would. He showed up when it mattered. He never raised his voice. When we argued, he stayed calm while I became emotional, which made me feel like I was always the unreasonable one. My mother warned me early. She said something about him felt rehearsed. I dismissed her concern and slowly stopped discussing him with her at all. Grant proposed quickly. I said yes without hesitation. The wedding was held on family property. He cried during his vows. Everyone commented on how devoted he seemed. I believed every word he said. After we married, nothing obvious went wrong. There were no explosions, no sudden changes, just small shifts that were easy to ignore. He became more curious about my finances, not demanding, just interested. He asked questions framed as concern, not control. I answered them without thinking. When we struggled to conceive, he was supportive in public and quiet in private. When the fertility diagnosis came back, he reacted with visible emotion. He cried. He apologized. I comforted him. I did not realize his grief was not about loss, but about adjustment. He insisted on handling the IVF research. He chose the clinic. He managed the appointments and paperwork. I let him because I was exhausted and trusted him completely. That was the moment, she said, when my role in his plan shifted. I thought we were trying to build a family. He was building leverage. The fertility diagnosis changed the balance of our marriage in ways I did not see at the time. The doctor explained that natural conception was almost impossible. Grant sat beside me, holding my hand, nodding as if he was absorbing devastating news. In the car afterward, he cried for a long time. He said he felt broken. He said he was sorry for failing me. I told him there was nothing to forgive. What I did not know was that the diagnosis did not end his plans. It forced him to redesign them. IVF became the solution he pushed immediately. He spoke with certainty, not hesitation. He already knew which clinics were best. He said he had researched success rates, procedures, costs. He said he wanted to protect me from stress, so he would handle the details. I agreed without resistance. I was emotionally drained and wanted the process to be over. The first cycle failed. I was devastated. I stayed in bed for days, barely speaking. Grant was attentive during that time. He brought food. He held me. He told me we would try again. I believed his care was love. The second cycle worked. When the pregnancy test came back positive, Grant reacted exactly the way a husband should. He smiled. He hugged me. He talked about the future. He spoke about nurseries and names and schools. He told me we were finally becoming a real family. A few days later, he mentioned something that seemed harmless at the time. He said now that we were expecting a child, we should update our wills. He said it was responsible. He said it was about security. I agreed without thinking. After that, the conversations about money increased. Slowly, carefully, he suggested that access to my trust would make things easier if something happened to me during childbirth. He framed everything as concern for the baby. Every sentence ended with safety. Every request sounded reasonable. When I hesitated, his tone changed just enough for me to notice, but not enough to accuse him. He would grow quiet, distant, then affectionate again, as if nothing had happened. At the time, I thought this was stress. The doctor told me something different. She said the pregnancy was not the beginning of his plan. It was the point where he believed he had already won. After the pregnancy was confirmed, my husband's patience began to disappear. Not suddenly, not openly, but in ways that made me question myself instead of him. He started guarding his phone. He changed his password and never left it unattended. If it rang late, he stepped into another room. When I asked, he said it was work. He always said it was work. His schedule changed. He began staying out late several nights a week. He said his clients needed him, that markets were unstable. That pressure came with responsibility. I did not understand his work well enough to argue. When I did ask questions, he responded calmly and made me feel foolish for doubting him. Receipts began appearing in places they did not belong. Restaurants I had never been to. Hotel charges in the city, less than an hour from our home. When I confronted him, he explained everything without hesitation. Client dinners, conferences, long meetings that ran late. His answers came quickly, too quickly, but they always sounded complete. When I pressed further, his calm hardened. He told me I was being paranoid. He blamed my hormones. He said pregnancy made women irrational and that I needed to control myself. By the end of those conversations, I was apologizing. The money discussions returned with more urgency. He asked again about being added to my trust. He said it was practical. He said every married couple did it. When I refused, he withdrew emotionally. He stopped touching me. He said he was afraid of hurting the baby. It sounded caring, but it felt like distance. One night, I woke up and found him in the kitchen speaking quietly into his phone. I heard him say that everything would be settled soon. He noticed me and ended the call immediately. He told me it was nothing. I did not ask more questions. I wanted peace more than answers. A week later, my best friend asked me when the last time was that my husband looked happy to see me. Not polite, not performing, happy. I had no answer. The doctor leaned forward when she told me this part. She said none of those changes were random. They were preparation. The doctor told me that by the time I noticed something was wrong, my husband had already finished the most important part of his plan. Everything I was seeing now was not panic or pressure. It was timing. She explained that the fertility clinic my husband chose was not random. Someone he had identified there months earlier worked in a position that handled samples and records. That person was in financial trouble. Student loans, credit cards, desperation. My husband noticed it and used it. He approached her privately. He told her his wife did not know he was using donor sperm. He said it was for medical reasons he did not want to explain to me. He said he was protecting me. He said he would pay for her silence. He offered an amount she could not refuse. She agreed. My husband's sample was never used. Another man's sperm was substituted without my knowledge, without my consent, and without any record that I would ever see. The embryo that implanted successfully did not belong to my husband genetically. He knew that from the beginning. I asked why he would do that if he wanted a child with me. The doctor looked at me carefully and said he did not want a child. He wanted proof. Proof that would come later. She told me my husband's plan required patience. He needed a pregnancy to exist. He needed time to pass. He needed me to believe everything was normal. He needed witnesses. He needed records. He needed silence. After the birth, she said, he planned to suggest a DNA test. Not angrily, not suspiciously. Lovingly, publicly, something sentimental, something that would make refusal look guilty. When the results came back showing he was not the biological father, he would act shocked, hurt, betrayed. Then he would show altered clinic records, stating that our IVF attempt had failed and that the pregnancy must have happened naturally afterward. I would be accused of cheating. My marriage contract had a clause for that. The doctor said my husband's goal was not divorce. It was control. And he had designed everything so that by the time I understood the truth, it would be too late to stop him. When she finished explaining the plan, I could not speak. I kept staring at the folder on the desk, knowing that once I opened it, there would be no way back to the life I believed I had. The doctor did not rush me. She only said one thing clearly. My husband did not know that I knew, and that was the only reason I still had control. She opened the folder for me. Inside were copies of clinic records that did not match the versions I had been shown before. There were internal logs showing a sample switch. There were payment records routed through accounts connected to my husband. There were messages between him and 2 clinic employees, written carefully, never direct, but clear enough when read together. I asked how she had all of this. She told me her sister worked at the clinic. 3 weeks earlier, her sister had broken down and confessed everything. The guilt had been eating her alive. She could not sleep. She could not function. She had agreed to help because she needed money and because my husband convinced her that no one would be hurt. She was wrong. The doctor told me there was more. My husband had been bleeding money, gambling debts, large ones. He owed people who did not wait patiently. The money he paid to the clinic did not come from savings. It came from stolen client funds, taken slowly so no one would notice. That was why he needed my inheritance. That was why the pressure increased after the pregnancy. That was why he was rushing. I finally understood something that had confused me for months. He was not acting like a man preparing to become a father. He was acting like a man racing a deadline. The doctor told me not to confront him, not to cry, not to change my behavior. She said if he sensed fear or suspicion, he would accelerate everything. She said I needed to go home and pretend nothing had happened. Before I left, she looked at me and said one final thing. "Your husband believes you are weak," she said. "That belief is the only reason he will lose." I picked up my keys, walked out of the office, and drove home to the man who thought his plan was still perfect. I went home the way she told me to, calm, smiling, careful. I parked the car, walked inside, and acted like the woman my husband expected to see. Grant was in the kitchen when I arrived. He asked about the appointment. He asked if the baby was fine. I told him everything was perfect. I even showed him the ultrasound image the doctor had printed earlier. He kissed my forehead and relaxed instantly. That reaction told me more than any document had. That night, I apologized to him. I told him I had been emotional lately. I blamed hormones. I said I was sorry for questioning him about work and money. I used the same words he had used on me for months. I watched his shoulders loosen. I watched his confidence return. He thought he had fixed me. He slept easily. I did not. I stayed awake planning, not revenge, survival. I understood now that panic would only help him. He had built his plan on the belief that I would break when the truth appeared. I needed him to keep believing that. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove 2 hours to meet a private investigator recommended by the doctor. I told her everything. She did not interrupt. She did not react emotionally. When I finished, she said my husband had made the mistake men like him always make. He reused patterns. 10 days later, she confirmed the rest of the picture. Grant had been having an affair for 8 months. Hotel rooms matched the receipts I found. The woman worked under him. He had paid for her silence the same way he paid everyone else. There was also another woman from years earlier. Wealthy, similar background, similar ending. She had escaped before he could finish what he started. The investigator also confirmed the gambling debts, larger than I had been told, dangerous enough to explain his urgency. I met the clinic nurse in secret. She agreed to testify. She had saved everything. The donor was located. He was furious and willing to cooperate. The clinic employee who altered records panicked once he learned others were speaking. He agreed to talk. The final call I made was to my mother. I told her everything. She did not interrupt. She did not say she had warned me. She asked what I needed and told me she would handle the rest. That was when I understood something important. Grant thought I was alone. He was wrong. Once my mother became involved, everything moved faster than my husband expected. She contacted a lawyer she trusted and told me not to worry about details. She said my job was simple. Stay calm. Stay silent. Let Grant believe the future was unfolding exactly as he planned. The lawyer reviewed the evidence quietly, the clinic records, the payment trails. The witness statements already lined up. He said the case was stronger than my husband realized. Strong enough that timing mattered more than confrontation. If Grant sensed danger, he could disappear, destroy evidence, or force the plan forward before we were ready. So we waited. Grant continued playing his role perfectly. He talked about baby names. He complained about work. He reminded me again that we should revisit the trust paperwork soon. Each time he mentioned it, I agreed vaguely and changed the subject. He believed I was finally cooperating. 2 weeks later, I suggested something that made his eyes light up immediately. I told him we should celebrate the pregnancy properly. A gathering, family and close friends, something happy, something public. I said it would be good for everyone to see how strong we were. He loved the idea. He suggested making it special, meaningful. He said it might be the perfect time to do something symbolic. He brought up the DNA test again, smiling as if it was romantic. He said it would be proof of fatherhood, something to frame, something to show the baby one day. I watched him carefully while he spoke. He was excited but not nervous. That told me everything. He was not afraid of the test. He was counting on it. Behind the scenes, everything was ready. The nurse had given her sworn statement. The donor had agreed to appear. The altered records had been preserved. The financial crimes had been flagged. Law enforcement was informed but waiting. The party date was set. Grant believed it would be the moment he became a victim. He did not understand that he had already walked into the trap. And this time, I was the one controlling the timing. The day of the gathering arrived exactly the way Grant wanted it to. He woke up early, dressed carefully, and rehearsed his charm without realizing it. He kept checking his phone, sending messages I did not ask about. He was calm, confident, a man who believed the ending had already been written. Guests began arriving in the afternoon. Family, friends, people who trusted him, people who believed his version of our marriage. Grant moved through them easily, smiling, laughing, placing his hand on my back at the right moments. Anyone watching would have seen a devoted husband and an excited future father. I stayed close to him and said very little. At some point, he leaned toward me and said it again, exactly as expected. He said the DNA test would be a beautiful moment. He said everyone would love it. He said it would show how much he trusted me. I nodded and told him we would do it when the time felt right. He mistook that for agreement. What he did not see were the people placed quietly around the space. My lawyer, my mother, the investigator, the witnesses who had already agreed to speak when needed. He did not notice the police parked out of sight. He was too busy performing. When the moment came, he took a glass in his hand and raised it slightly, drawing attention. He spoke about family, about honesty, about how proud he was to be a husband and soon a father. Then he looked at me and suggested again that we make the day unforgettable by confirming paternity together. Everyone watched me. I stepped forward instead. I took the microphone from his hand calmly and thanked everyone for coming. I said this gathering was about truth and clarity. I said my husband was right, that it was time to be honest. His smile froze. I reached down and picked up a folder. That was the first time I saw fear reach his eyes. He finally understood something had changed. He just did not know yet how badly. I told everyone that before any test was opened, there were facts they needed to hear. I said this was not a celebration built on assumptions, but on records. I opened the folder and held up the first document so the people closest could see it. I said these were the original medical records from our fertility clinic, obtained before any changes could be made. Grant tried to interrupt me. He laughed once and said I was confused. He said pregnancy had been hard on me. I did not respond. I continued reading. I explained that my husband had been diagnosed as infertile. That natural conception between us was medically impossible. I said this was documented and verified. I watched his parents exchange looks. I watched his confidence drain slightly, but not completely. He still believed he could talk his way out. Then I said that during our IVF treatment, my husband paid clinic staff to switch samples. I said the sperm used to create my pregnancy did not belong to him. I said it belonged to a donor I had never met and never consented to use. Gasps spread through the crowd. Grant raised his voice. He said it was a lie. He said I was humiliating him for attention. He said none of this made sense. That was when the nurse stepped forward. She identified herself clearly and said she had been paid to assist in the switch. She said she had records of the payments and messages. She said she had already given her statement to investigators. She did not look at Grant while she spoke. Then the donor spoke. He said he had been paid in cash and told it was a private arrangement. He said he had no idea a crime was involved until he was contacted later. He said he was willing to testify. Grant's hands began to shake. I told everyone the next part was the reason for the deception. I said after the birth, my husband planned to suggest a DNA test in public. When it proved he was not the father, he would accuse me of cheating. I said our marriage contract contained a penalty clause for that. I said the amount was significant. Grant shouted my name. He told me to stop. He told me we could talk privately. I said there was nothing private left. And that was when the police stepped forward. The officers identified themselves and asked Grant to step away from the crowd. For a moment, he did not move. He looked at his parents, then at me, as if waiting for someone to stop what was happening. No one did. One of the officers repeated his name and told him he was being detained pending formal arrest. Grant finally spoke again, but his voice was different. It was sharp and fast. He said this was a misunderstanding. He said he was being set up. He said I was unstable and that none of this could be trusted without proof. That was when my lawyer stepped forward and said the proof had already been submitted. I told everyone there was more. I said the clinic fraud was not his only crime. I said the money he used to pay for silence did not belong to him. I said he had taken it from his own clients over time, hiding the transfers so they would not be noticed. I said his firm had already been alerted and had frozen his access to accounts. Someone near the bar recognized the name of the firm and went silent. I said my husband also had gambling debts that explained his urgency. I said he owed people who did not wait patiently. I said that was why he needed my inheritance and why the plan had a deadline. Grant tried to move toward me. One of the officers stopped him. Then I said the last thing. I said he had been having an affair for months with someone who worked under him. I said there were records, photographs, and hotel receipts. I said this mattered because the same contract clause he planned to use against me applied to him instead. His mother made a sound and sat down hard. His father stared at the ground. Grant said my name again, quietly this time. He said we could fix this. He said he loved me. He said everything he did was for us. The officer told him to turn around. As the cuffs closed around his wrists, Grant finally understood something. The story he had planned to tell was over. And the one he never prepared for had already been told. They led him away while the crowd stood frozen. No one tried to stop it. No one spoke for him. Grant looked back once, searching for my face, but I did not move. I did not follow. I stayed where I was, holding the folder he had never expected to see. After the police car left, the gathering ended quietly. People did not argue or ask questions. They understood enough. What mattered had already happened. My lawyer spoke briefly with officers and witnesses. Statements were confirmed. Timelines were locked in place. There would be no confusion later. That night, Grant was denied bail. The risk of flight was too high. The financial crimes alone were enough to keep him in custody, but the added charges made the decision immediate. Fraud, conspiracy, embezzlement, each one carried weight. Together, they closed every exit he thought he had. By morning, his firm issued a formal notice. An internal investigation had confirmed missing funds. Accounts were audited. Clients were contacted. His access was permanently revoked. The reputation he had built carefully over years collapsed in hours. The woman he had been seeing resigned the same day. She did not defend him. She did not wait to be questioned. She disappeared before anyone could ask her name. More information surfaced quickly. Another woman from years earlier came forward. Her story followed the same pattern. Charm, trust, financial pressure, control. She had escaped before the final step. This time, she was willing to speak. Grant stopped calling me after the third day. His lawyer reached out instead. He suggested negotiation. He suggested privacy. He suggested we protect what was left. My lawyer declined all of it. The contract Grant had planned to use against me was now evidence against him. The clause worked in my favor. The numbers no longer mattered. He had nothing to offer. From the outside, it looked sudden. From the inside, it felt like the end of something that had been waiting to collapse for a long time. And it was not finished yet. The case moved faster than I expected. Once the first charges were filed, everything Grant had hidden began surfacing on its own. Financial records that had once looked clean were pulled apart line by line. Each small transfer he thought no one would notice was now obvious when placed together. The pattern was impossible to deny. The clinic employees who had helped him started cooperating fully. Fear did what money once had. They provided messages, timestamps, internal logs, and statements that matched perfectly with the records already collected. The altered files were traced. The original versions were recovered. There was no gap left for doubt. Grant's lawyer tried to slow things down. He requested delays. He questioned credibility. He hinted that my pregnancy made me unreliable. None of it worked. Every claim was met with documentation. Every denial collapsed under evidence. Grant finally asked to see me. The request came through his lawyer, framed as a need for closure. He wanted to talk privately, he wanted to explain, he wanted forgiveness. My lawyer advised against it, but said the decision was mine. I agreed under one condition: everything would be recorded. No promises, no discussion of reconciliation, no negotiation. When I sat across from him, he looked smaller than I remembered. Not guilty, not ashamed, just angry that his plan had failed. He said he never meant for things to go this far. He said I was supposed to cooperate. He said I ruined everything. I told him he ruined it the moment he decided I was something to use. He asked about the baby. I did not answer. That was the last conversation we ever had. When I stood to leave, he finally understood something that had escaped him for years. He never lost because he was unlucky. He lost because I stopped believing the story he wrote for me. After that meeting, everything became procedural. There were no more surprises, only confirmations. The nurse from the clinic testified under oath. She did not hesitate. She explained how Grant approached her, how he framed the request as protection, how the payment was made, and how the records were altered afterward. Her statement matched the documents exactly. The donor gave his testimony next. He described the cash payment, the lack of consent from me, and the instructions he was given. He said he had never been told a crime was involved. His anger was controlled but clear. He had no reason to protect Grant. The embryologist tried to minimize his role. That did not last long. Faced with evidence and the certainty of prison, he cooperated fully. He explained how the records were scheduled to be changed after the birth to support Grant's accusation. The timeline was already prepared. The edits were drafted. All that remained was the moment. That moment would never come. Prosecutors added charges: intent to commit fraud, medical record falsification, financial abuse. Each addition narrowed Grant's options further. His legal strategy shifted from denial to damage control. My divorce was finalized quietly. There were no arguments. There was nothing left to divide. Every asset he claimed was either frozen or under investigation. The contract he planned to use against me closed the case in my favor. His objections were irrelevant. Grant remained in custody while hearings continued. Bail was denied again. The gambling debts surfaced publicly once the financial records became part of the case. The people he owed stopped waiting. Pressure came from every direction. The woman from his past submitted her statement. It confirmed a pattern that could no longer be ignored. He did not target by accident. He selected carefully. He waited patiently. He repeated what worked until it failed. By the time the trial date was set, the outcome was no longer a question. Grant had built his life on control. And control was the first thing he lost. The trial did not last long. The evidence spoke before anyone raised their voice. Records were introduced in order. Payments, messages, timelines. Each witness confirmed the same sequence of events without contradiction. The defense tried to suggest confusion, misunderstanding, emotional instability. None of it survived contact with facts. Grant watched most of it in silence. When he did react, it was never remorse. It was frustration. Each document removed another version of the story he had planned to tell. Each witness closed another door. The verdict came quickly. Guilty on all counts. Fraud, conspiracy, embezzlement, medical record manipulation. The judge listed the charges without emotion. Sentencing was scheduled for a later date, but the outcome was already clear. Grant would not be leaving anytime soon. After the verdict, I was asked if I wanted to speak. I declined. There was nothing left to explain. Everything that mattered was already on record. In the weeks that followed, the rest of his life collapsed quietly. His professional licenses were revoked. His accounts were seized. His name was added to public records that could not be erased. People who once praised him stopped answering calls. His parents issued a short statement and withdrew from public view. They did not defend him. They did not attack me. Silence was the only response left. The final paperwork from the court arrived on a Thursday morning. I signed where indicated and returned it without hesitation. The marriage was over, not emotionally, legally, completely. That same afternoon, my doctor called to schedule my next appointment. The pregnancy was progressing normally. The baby was healthy. For the first time since that locked office door, I allowed myself to sit still. Grant had believed that once the truth appeared, I would collapse. He never considered that I might outlast it. After the trial, there was no relief, only momentum. Systems do not stop once they start moving. They finish what they begin. New charges were filed related to additional financial victims who came forward after seeing Grant's name in the news. Each one followed the same pattern: trust first, pressure later, loss at the end. Grant tried to appeal. His lawyer filed motions that repeated arguments already rejected. Each motion was denied. The court records grew thicker. The sentence was finalized without delay. Years, not months, no special conditions, no exceptions. I was not present when it was read. I was in a different building, signing documents related to my estate. Everything was restructured. Access limited. Protections reinforced. The same systems Grant tried to exploit were now sealed against him permanently. A letter arrived from him 2 weeks later. Handwritten, emotional, carefully worded. He said he still loved me. He said he never meant to hurt me. He said he hoped one day I would understand why he did what he did. I did not respond. I did not keep the letter. Another message came through his lawyer asking about the baby. I declined to answer. There was no legal requirement to continue any form of contact. The question was not relevant to the case. What mattered was forward movement. Preparations for the birth continued without interruption. Appointments, plans, decisions made without negotiation, without explanation, without fear. People asked how I felt. I did not give them an answer they expected. There was no satisfaction, no victory, only certainty. Grant had believed his plan would end with applause or sympathy. Instead, it ended with silence. And silence was something he could not control. The birth came earlier than expected. Not dramatic, not chaotic, just sooner than planned. The doctor said stress often does that. I did not argue. By then, stress had been my constant companion for months, quiet but heavy. The delivery went smoothly. The baby cried immediately, healthy, strong. The paperwork was signed without delay. There was no second name to consider, no discussion, no waiting. Within hours, the legal confirmations were finalized. Custody was uncontested. There were no claims to challenge, no petitions filed. The case that could have followed my child for years was closed before it began. Grant was informed through official channels. Nothing personal, nothing emotional, just facts. He did not respond. A few days later, sentencing details became public. The length was longer than originally expected. Additional victims had added weight. Financial restitution was ordered, though there was little left to recover. The court did not soften its language. Intent mattered. Planning mattered, damage mattered. People tried to reach me, reporters, distant acquaintances, even strangers who recognized the story. I declined every request. The story had already been told where it mattered, in court, on record. One evening, my lawyer called and said something that caught my attention. Grant had finally asked a direct question, not about money, not about appeals, not even about me. He asked whether his plan had ever come close to working. The answer was simple. Yes, too close. That was the part he would never fully understand. He had almost succeeded because I trusted him, because I loved him, because I believed the version of him he performed so well. That belief was gone now. And nothing he said or did after that could bring it back. The final hearing closed every remaining door. No appeals were granted. No sentences reduced. The judge made it clear that the planning mattered more than the outcome. The attempt itself was enough. Grant had not made a mistake. He had executed a strategy and failed. He was transferred out of holding and into a permanent facility within the week. His name disappeared from professional listings. His licenses were void. His accounts remained frozen. There was nothing left for him to negotiate with. One last document arrived addressed to me. A formal notice confirming that no future claims could be made against my estate or my child. It was the cleanest ending possible. No loose ends, no hidden risks. The investigator closed her file. The lawyer archived the case. The clinic revised its procedures under oversight. The people who had helped him faced their own consequences. Some lost their jobs, some lost their careers. None of them avoided responsibility. Grant's parents did not contact me again. They attended the sentencing and left before it ended. Whatever loyalty they had left was not strong enough to survive the evidence. Weeks passed without incident. No messages, no threats, no surprises. The silence confirmed what the court already had. He was finished. One evening, while reviewing paperwork, I noticed something small but final. Grant's name had been removed from every shared record, not crossed out, deleted, as if it had never been there at all. That was when the tension finally eased. Not because justice had been served, but because uncertainty was gone. The plan that had been designed to trap me had collapsed completely. There was only one part left. And it had nothing to do with him. The last part did not happen in a courtroom or a hospital or an office. It happened quietly, without witnesses, without documents, without anyone else involved. That was fitting. Everything Grant had done relied on control, attention, and reaction. The ending did not give him any of that. Life did not return to what it had been before. It moved forward without him in it. The routines changed. Decisions were made without resistance. There were no arguments to win and no explanations to prepare. Every choice belonged to me alone. The records stayed closed. The case stayed finished. No new information surfaced because there was nothing left to uncover. The system had taken everything it needed from him and left nothing behind. Occasionally, someone would ask if I ever thought about how close it had come. I did not answer those questions. Thinking about proximity does not change outcomes. What mattered was that the plan failed before it reached my child. Grant had built his future around one assumption: that I would freeze when faced with shame, that I would panic when accused, that I would trade truth for quiet. He was wrong. Not because I was stronger than he expected, but because he never understood the risk of choosing the wrong person to manipulate. He believed preparation guaranteed success. He believed patience made him careful. In the end, the only thing his preparation gave him was time to be exposed. The story did not end with confrontation or forgiveness or reflection. It ended with separation, permanent, documented, and complete. The life he tried to take continued without interruption. And the life he tried to build no longer existed at all. You have reached the end of the text.